Good evening out there. Thank you very much for tuning in to the Lessons of Vietnam show tonight. We were scheduled a guest, but at the last minute, they had to cancel out. There was a death of a close friend and big veteran supporter locally. So he had to bow out, but I'm going to try to do his show, his part anyway. So we're going to do kind of a two-part show tonight. I'll get into what we're going to be talking about in just a moment. But the Lessons of Vietnam show, as you know, we try to tell the real story of the Vietnam War and those of us who participated and dispel some of the myths and mistruths out there because there's enough out there for everybody to have their own. I'm your host, Bill Dixon, Vietnam 67 and 68. Got through that little thing called Tet Offensive. I was stationed at Long Binh, which was about 22 miles, 20 miles, depending on who's saying it, north of Saigon. We are broadcasting courtesy of Nissan Communications here in the worldwide studios of Amnon Nissan's Nissan Communications. If you have any comments, suggestions that you won't need to contact me, give me an email, drop me an email at Dixon, that's Dixon, Bill80 at yahoo.com to participate in the show while we're live, or you want to make a comment or whatever. Go to your telephone and you dial 919-518-9773. Or even better, go to your computer and type in computers 2K voice, just like it says there on the screen. And you can take part in the show and enjoy the show. And I hope you always get some good information at it as well as being entertained from time to time. So we're going to keep right on moving along. Our next screen, as always, is the Veterans Crisis Line. It's important we get this information out. If you are a veteran, or you know a veteran who's struggling, who is not necessarily someone that you think of is going to commit suicide, but just struggling, give them these numbers and dial 1-800-273-8255, press 1, and someone is on that line waiting to talk to them and give them some help and so forth. There's somebody out there just struggling, post-traumatic stress, depression, just general day-to-day stuff can weigh, and it keeps right on building up. So think about your veteran friends out there or your brother veteran. Okay, now as we dive into the show here, this is kind of an interesting picture. I thought it was dealing with the Veterans Administration. Sometimes make you feel like this. It's you're out you were in Vietnam and you're wandering through the swamp, trying to get through, waiting, and hard to get along and move out, and the leeches and the mosquitoes and everything else. And it's kind of like that sometimes, waiting for VA to take care of us and give us the benefits and so forth. I've had my battles with VA. I've had good service from them, and I've had some. We won't even want to talk about it, but that just cartoon just kind of jumped out at me when I was preparing for tonight's show. So now what we're going to be talking about is a special event. It's not necessarily just for Vietnam veterans, but right now, I would say there's probably a lot of Vietnam veterans will be there. It's the Veterans Experience Action Center. Now, this is something that the American Legion Post 67 and some of their supporters have been doing for several years, and it has worked out fantastic. And whether you live close by or not, I think you will find this information helpful. Also, there will be some people from the Veterans Administration from Washington coming to this event to see about putting it nationwide. It was started here several years ago by members of the state American Legion. Post 67 has taken it and run with it. Now, it's the Veterans Assistance with Claims and Benefits. A lot of you out there have been fighting for years with your benefits and your claims and so forth. Well, this is a way to solve that problem. Would you like to file a new claim with the VA? Do you have questions about VA appeals or benefits you and your family are entitled to? There's a lot of benefits out there that we don't know about. Do you have questions about VA health care? You are to be able to get most, if not all of these questions answered at this event. For all veterans and family members of veterans, veterans and dependents will be assisted by a combined team including veterans benefits and health administrators, vet centers, and veteran service officers. And they will be able to take care of your claims and so forth right there on the spot quite often. Okay? Helping our veterans, assistance with the following: face-to-face explanations and assistance facilitating and expediting existing claims and appeals, filing new claims and accepting all claims-related evidence for processing and providing information regarding benefits and related programs. You know, sometimes when we fill out these papers and so forth and we send them in, it'd be nice if we could go and meet the person who is reading our files rather than being a number, that we're a real person. And at this event, the person who's going to be reading your files and deciding, making decisions, you're sitting right there in front of them, and it's a little more personalized and just things much better when you go eyeball to eyeball. It's going to be held at the Herbert C. Young Community Center right there in the middle of Cary. It's going to be the 101 Wilkinson Avenue. It's right next to the police station and City Hall Community Center. So that's where it's going to be held at, and it's not hard to find at all. So come on out, but I can tell you now, you might want to be there early, and you'll understand as I keep going. Okay. Thank you is what they're saying for serving our country and protecting our freedom. The dates of that is going to be the 12th, 13th, and 14th of September. The hours are on the 12th is from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. On the which is a Thursday, I believe. On the 13th is Friday, and it's going to be from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. And on Saturday, 8 a.m. to 2 p.m. Now, if you are in line, you will be seen. Okay? So, but you still might want to get there early, okay? Important information. Now, let me read this again. Important information. Bring with you all the proper documentations about your case. Now, what are all the proper documents for your case? Basically, I'm going to recommend everything and anything. Your DD-214, all medical records about your disability, both military and civilian, and dependency documents, if new or not already provided to the VA. Even if you've already provided, I highly recommend you bring it anyway, because sometimes the VA left hand don't know what the VA right hand's doing. Be proactive. If you got it, bring it. When in doubt, bring it with you. Okay. All right. Now, here's a guy that came. Let me read his story to you. I'm leaving here today feeling confident. It was by an article that was in the paper by Stephen Brooks, and the man's name was Mark Stratton, was running out of options. We feel like that sometimes working with the VA. The U.S. Army retiree was suffering various symptoms, including sleeplessness, when his wife urged him to get checked for PTSD. He didn't want to because he was embarrassed, but he did it anyway. Then his wife told him she wanted him to get evaluated beyond that, and she told me, "I want you back the way you were." Well, I can tell you right now, that ain't going to happen, said Stratton, whose military career included multiple tours in the Middle East. Searching for options and frustrated by what he called a lack of consistency with the Department of Veterans Affairs, Stratton was contacted by his cousin, Terrence, a fellow Army retiree. Terrence suggested Mark come from Phoenix, that's in Arizona, by the way, to the American Legion's Veterans Experience Action Center in Cary on September 14th and 16th of last year. Mark said Terrence told him a similar center conducted by the American Legion previously was the real deal. That was the one the year before. He said, "I don't know anyone who went there who didn't feel good when they left." I know a lot of us out there don't even want to talk to the VA. Quite often, we don't get our benefits and so forth because we don't want to hassle the VA. Because anything you're dealing with the government, when I came home, I didn't want anything to do with the VA. I didn't want anything to do with the government. Just wanted to let me alone and let me get on with my life when I came home from Vietnam and came home from Texas. Okay. Mark said Terrence told him a cinema center conducted by the American Legion previously was the real deal, he said. I don't know anyone who went there who didn't feel good when they left, which we just talked about. Count Mark as one of the center's satisfied customers after flying from Phoenix to Norfolk, Virginia to meet his cousin, a resident of Salisbury, Maryland. The pair got in line for the center at 9:45 p.m. on September 13th. That's the day before. A little less than 12 hours before the center opened. I found today that I actually have service-connected claims that I didn't know about and never would have known about, Mark said. The gentleman who helped me go through all my documents. He saw things that I did not see. I'm leaving here today feeling confident I'm going to get help that I need. If that's compensation, so be it. But the first thing I want to know is what's wrong, and I want to know what's going on because money is not going to fix that. Mark was one of 1,025 veterans who visited the Herbert Young Community Center in Cary over the 3-day period. American Legion Post 67 volunteers joined volunteers from the Veterans of Foreign Wars and other veteran service organizations, veteran service officers from all over the state, and VA staff from the Veterans Health Administration, Veterans Benefit Administration, and the Vet Center program. Now, that probably right there, that picture probably looks like the desk of someone in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, where all the claims would normally go. They just stack them up. Veterans could check on the status of pending VA claims that's in that stack and file new ones on the spot. Some receive VA disability ratings while at the center. So you might be able to get your ratings right there. John Powell, another satisfied customer who served in the Army from 1991 to 99, including a deployment to Somalia, had a pending appeal on a disability rating increase request. A father of 3, his rating was increased to 90% after filling out information for a PTSD claim. He was told it would be bumped up to 100% after the claim is processed, an increase of more than $2,000 a month in compensation. I think it will give me a little bit of breathing room, Powell said. I was paying out of pocket because I was getting frustrated. Been there, done that one. That was really hitting on my wallet. Coming in here, I didn't expect anything. Hearing that from them and seeing the smile on VA staffer's face, you see he was happy to help me. Let's talk about another gentleman who was there, James B. Gardner from Kenly, North Carolina, a Vietnam veteran, a Vietnam War Army veteran who previous claim had been denied. Said he found out what needed to be to do to appeal the decision and also a PTSD screening appointment set up during his visit. That was set up during his visit. I'm glad I took the time to come up here, he said. I need to come up here and talk to someone person to person. I'd rather talk person to person than talk on the phone anytime. Jose Antonio Vasquez, a 50-year member of Post 56 in Puerto Rico and World War II Army veteran, came to the center to file a claim for service-connected conditions. Coming to the center was very, very necessary and valuable, he said. U.S. Marine Corps veteran William Bozeman was able to get a claim filed that he said he was told would be reviewed in a week. He was accompanied at the center by his friend, Angela Lewis. This is wonderful, wonderful thing that they're doing, Lewis said. A lot of people who need to file claims may not be able to for whatever reason. To have this place and to be able to talk to someone face to face is priceless. And you can see that guy was kind of buried down in paperwork as we get from time to time. Okay. Now, Moses Gloria. If you're around here, you probably know who Moses is. He's an Afghanistan and Iraqi veteran. He is also has a traumatic brain injury. He is the Veterans Outreach Specialist with the Vet Center here in Raleigh. But this is what Moses had to say. Uh, Moses Gloria, Veterans Outreach Specialist for VA's Vet Center in Raleigh, said what's important is that raters and adjudicators, when they're back in their office, sometimes they don't put the connection between the paperwork and the veteran. Having the ability to have face time with a veteran improves morale for our VBA employees and with the same with our VHA and Vet Center employees. By doing this event and having us sit across from another veteran instead of looking electronically on a computer screen at over 1,000 pages of medical documentations. They can easily reference the veteran's experience and look up stuff that might be overlooked. And there is one of the Vet Center, that's one of the people looking up stuff on the computer. Okay. Wait times may be long, so you got to be patient. But there's going to be coffee, water, and snacks provided free of charge. So if you're in line, now if you want more information about this, contact Richard Spirason, as you see there, and his contact information on is on computer. You can email him at Kerry VEAC. That's Kerry Victor Echo Alpha Charlie at gmail.com. He can fill you in. He's the man that's heading it up there for Post 67. So the information is out there. Highly recommend if you're having problems with a case or benefits or whatever, that you take the time and come. As you saw, the gentleman came from Phoenix, Arizona. His cousin came from Maryland, and the other gentleman came from Puerto Rico. Not telling you that you need to come for a long distance, but it may be worth it for you. If you can't come, I would contact your congressman and whoever else you need to contact in your VA hospital there, wherever you are, and encourage them to check out this event. This is at least 3 years that I know I've been doing it, and it has been working very well. So that kind of gives you information that you need on the Veterans Experience Action Center. If you have any questions, you got my email address there, dixonbill80 at yahoo.com. So you can go in and send me information, and I'll try to forward it to Richard or to whoever it needs to be. But now we're going to do a second part. And I thought maybe since I've been talking to everybody else and so forth, that you need to know a little bit about me and my Vietnam experience and so forth. So let's meet the host of Lessons of Vietnam live streaming show. That's me, Bill Dixon. I'm a grandfather, I'm a father, I'm a husband, and I'm a Vietnam veteran and a lot of other different things, but we won't go into those right now. So, okay. Let's see. Now that's a good looking guy right there. I'm a membership organization, so I try to stay busy and get out there with the different groups. I'm a life member of Vietnam Veterans of America. I'm on the board of directors of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans of America for the state of North Carolina. I am vice president of Chapter 530 Vietnam Veterans of America. I'm a member of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated. I've been president about 12 different times at an organization. I'm a member of the Bridge Back Initiative, which was a thing we started through North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Incorporated. We've been going into schools, setting up lessons of Vietnam curriculum, speaking at schools and teacher conferences, returning to Vietnam 3 times and working with schools and orphanages in Vietnam, along with Centers for the Blind and building playgrounds. I am a member of the American Legion, commander of Post 297, Raleigh, North Carolina. Member of Veterans of Foreign Wars, life member of 8466 in Wake Forest. Also stand with the Patriot Guard Riders whenever possible, as long as working on a lot of different projects and so forth. Now, how do we get this thing started? How did the live streaming show Lessons of Vietnam get started? Well, it was all Nissan Communications' fault. Okay, we'll move on in that, and I can tell you a little bit about that. We have a blank screen there. Let's see what else we have. Okay. Aha. Where that blank screen came from, that was just testing you at home so that you could have time to catch up and so forth. I have no idea where that one came from. It wasn't there when I turned it off, but then again, I may hit something I didn't read. Let's talk about how Bill Dixon got started. So now, how did Bill Dixon, Vietnam veteran, get started? I was born in Wilson, North Carolina. At the time that I was born, the Wilson's greatest tobacco market was there in Wilson. Tobacco was the big thing. It was the flue-cured tobacco. It has a long and rich history of selling tobacco, and Wilson had as many as a dozen tobacco auction warehouses operating at different times. As you see there, the young man sitting on the tractor, that is not me, but he's in the tobacco field, and that's how I learned how to drive. And then the middle picture there, you see them put looping tobacco, where they take the tobacco from the field and put it in bundles and tie it onto a stick and put it up in that barn. Now, I started out driving a mule like that, pulling the tobacco truck, and then you have to go by hand and put it and hang it up in the racks up in there. Somebody's got to climb up in those racks. And back when I was young, I remember spending the night at the barns with my grandfather, who we cured with wood. We had flues going through the back of the barn. We cured with wood, so every night we had to keep the fires going so the temperature would be. And then the tobacco is basically cured, goes through another step, but then it ends up there at the tobacco warehouse, as you see there in Wilson. I cannot stand the smell of tobacco smoking, but there's nothing smells better than a tobacco warehouse with cured tobacco like that. It is fantastic, but not as much tobacco been going sold now as there used to be, and so forth. Then I grew up in Wilson, and I grew up across the street from Atlantic Christian College, which is now Barton. I worked at a soda shop right next to my house, which was also across the street from the girls' dorm, and that got interesting. The college I went to at the time, give you an idea, back in the time, the girls could wear shorts on Saturday up until 5 o'clock. Freshman girls could not ride in a car on a date or anything until after Thanksgiving. Every night during school, the cowbell would ring, and all the girls had to be in the girls' dorm. At 9:30, the cowbell rang again. All the girls could come out, and there was nowhere to go but Tweety's. That was the name of the soda shop. Man, I had a master's degree in English, but he ran a snack shop or a soda fountain named Tweety's. That was his name he went by. And all the girls, of course, came over. When all the girls came over, the boys came over, and it was a madhouse until 10 o'clock. At 10 o'clock, the cowbell rang again. All the girls had to be herded back into the dorm. Now, that today would never happen. I would probably be called racist or anti-feminism or whatever it was, but that's the way it was back in the day. I moved to Raleigh in the summer of 1964. I went to Barton College or Atlantic Christian College, but nobody told me I had to do extra work like homework and so forth. I was a PE major. I ran cross country track. I played intramural football, had a radio station program in an hour, and worked 40 hours a week. And lo and behold, I flunked out. They decided I needed a break. So I took a long break. I moved to Raleigh and got married. I got married to a young lady I met during Tweety time at the university. She was a freshman there at Atlantic Christian while I was still in high school. But we met there at Tweety's, and she evidently liked me. We've been married since 64. So I got married first of 1964 and worked odd jobs for a while. And then I decided I'd go back to school. So I went to what's we called then W.W. Holding Technical School and graduated in architectural drafting. That created a problem. I'm now out of school. I want to go get a job. I'm 1A, my draft status, which means I was prime beef. So every time I went to look for a job, they say, well, listen, we'd love to hire you, but why don't we wait until you get out of service? After a while, I got old. So I got to thinking, and I went down and talked to an Army recruiter. First, I went to a Navy recruiter because I wanted to get into CB, but they told me they were full at that time. and I'm not certain how much time I had. So I went down and talked to an Army recruiter. Now, he told me if I joined for 4 years, I could choose my school or MOS, that's military occupational specialty, and the location of assignment after school. So I signed up for drafting school in Germany. And I went through basic training at Fort Bragg in Fayetteville, North Carolina. Back then it was called Vietnam. Uh, that's because there was so many people going to Vietnam and coming back from Vietnam there. And as I was going through basic training, they gave me, because I did have a year and a half, almost 2 years of college, they gave me an aptitude test and decided that I should become a lieutenant. I got to thinking out there, and so you other soldiers out there can appreciate this. I said, no. I got called before the company commander. What is it you don't want to be an officer? I said, I don't want to lead men in combat. He said, we'll train you. I said, let me ask you something. I got a contract with y'all that says I'm going to drafting school and I'm going to Germany. Now, if I go to OCS, y'all going to make me a second lieutenant in the infantry and y'all going to ship me right on to Vietnam. He said, probably. And I said, well, let's see. If I weighed my thing, I think I'll stick with what I got. Oh, it didn't work well from that. I don't know whether he was supposed to got some Benny points off me going or whatever it was, because basic training even got worse. In fact, at the end, at graduation from basic training, my drill sergeant came to me and apologized. I'm the only one that did not get promoted from E1 to an E2 or better coming out of basic training. I couldn't believe he actually apologized to me, said he had nothing to do with it. So then they sent me to AIT, Advanced Individual Training at Fort Belvoir, Virginia, Army Engineering School. And I went there and studied drafting. My problem was that I had more experience drafting because I did a lot of drafting work while I was in school than my instructor. He didn't appreciate the questions we'd ask him because we knew he didn't have the answers. Anyway, almost flunked out there. So then I got orders for Vietnam. Now, my wife was already getting ready to move with me to Germany because she could go with me, but I got orders for Vietnam. I had to get on the phone and call my wife and tell her that don't worry about going to Germany. I'm going to Vietnam. Because when I got those orders, I went to them and said, hey, wait a minute, time out. I got a contract that says I'm going to engineering school. They said, where are you? And I said, engineering school. Okay. Well, what about Germany? Well, you joined for 4 years and we can send you to Germany anytime, but right now you're going to Vietnam. But we got to give you some specialized training because we're going to send you to the jungles of Vietnam. Specialized training. So one day they came, gave me some orders, and they picked me up on a bus, took me from Belvoir down to Fort Lee, Virginia, took me out to the firing range, gave me an M16 and 3 or 4 clips, and I shot at targets, which was set up for M14 so they wouldn't fall unless you shot in front of the target so the ricochet would knock them over. And they said, okay, you're now trained. Turn the rifle in. You don't even have to worry about cleaning it. We'll take care of it. So they never even showed me how to clean the rifle. And that was my training for Vietnam. Now, I got orders for Vietnam. Where is this place? What is this place? How and why this place? I tried to look it up in an old book my mother had. It was called an atlas. And I couldn't find it. So I went to somebody and says, what's going on here? I'm going to a country that doesn't exist. They said, well, it's French Indochina. I looked at it, and there was French Indochina in the book. And I said, wait a minute. Somebody's lying here. Is it French Indochina or is it Vietnam? They said, well, it used to be French Indochina. Now it's Vietnam. Okay. So now I checked and they said it was hot and humid, which I understood in hot and humid because, hey, I'm from North Carolina. I've worked in tobacco fields. It's hot and humid there. It's about as any place you can find, I thought. All during basic training, my drill sergeants used to tell me that little short people wearing black pajamas going to blow my sorry blanket away the first day in Vietnam. But see, I didn't really pay a whole lot of attention to them back then because I didn't think there were little short guys wearing black pajamas shooting at me when I went to Germany. So I didn't pay a whole lot of attention to it. But I certainly learned otherwise. So I told you about my special training. Let me tell you about some of the first. My first train ride was from Fort Bragg to Fort Belvoir. That was the first time I'd ever been on a train. My first plane rides from Raleigh to Vietnam, a long plane ride. My first time out of the country from the United States to Vietnam. Now, the trip to Vietnam was interesting. All my friends flew by commercial airplanes with flight attendants, cute little flight attendants. Me, Bill Dixon, Private E1, got to fly a military plane where you sit facing the back and you can see all the luggage and the whatever the baggage they're carrying all back there tied down. You can see it bouncing around as the plane bounces around. And my flight attendant was called Loadmaster, and there was nothing cute about him at all. Now, we flew in that plane, and the inside, whenever the plane made a turn, you could see by the cables, because you could see the cables would move and the plane would, that's why it was turning the plane. I mean, this plane was not exactly first class. In fact, it wasn't even tourist class. It did have an indoor potty on there and so forth. But we are flying along, and all of a sudden the pilot says, "We're going down." Now, he could have used different words, been all right with me, because I got up and looked out the one window, which was in the door. Other than that, there was no windows. Looked out the window, and I didn't see nothing but water. And then he came on there, and I forgot how many, there weren't many of us on the plane. He said, "We're going to land at Wake Island, but it's a monsoon, so everybody strap in." So we landed at Wake Island in the middle of the night. I don't have any idea what time it was. Don't really care at the time. We landed, and they worked on the plane all night. The next day, we got up, the sun was shining, and we flew out of Wake Island. And I'm glad it was dark when I landed at Wake Island, because Wake Island is basically a runway surrounded by water. There ain't a whole lot there. So we took off in the plane. We're flying along again, and so we're still having problems. We're going to be landing in Guam. So we landed in Guam. We spent about 4 hours there waiting for them to work on the airplane some more. Now, my orders when I left the United States said I was going to Pleiku. Now, Pleiku is kind of north central Vietnam. It's up right at the Central Highlands. Okay, so we landed at Guam, and they work on the airplane, and we take off again. Now we land at Bien Hoa Air Base, which is not where you would land if you're going to Pleiku. Now, Bien Hoa Air Base is in existence today. It's run by the communist military there. Bien Hoa Air Base, quite often, the bad guys, the communists, would drop mortar rounds on the planes as they would come in, kind of give them a welcome to country. But they didn't do that in my case. But the plane hit the ground hard. And as we were going along, I started looking out the window, and we kept getting closer and closer to the end of the runway. And I'm going, there are houses. I mean, there are shacks, but there are houses down there. And just before the nose of the airplane got there, we made a turn almost on one wheel, taxied back up. And his thing was, get off the airplane. In other words, we don't want to sit here long. So I got off the airplane, and they took me over to the hangar, and said, "Okay, load up on this bus." And they carried me over to a place called 90th Replacement, which was like a big meat warehouse. And I think whoever it was that got mad with me in stateside knew me there, because when I got off the bus at 90th Replacement, Sergeant walked up and says, you're on KP, come with me." I just got off the stupid plane. I'm already washing dishes and peeling potatoes. Now I'm sitting there during the night washing dishes. Well, actually, at that time, I'm sitting there peeling potatoes, and I look out, and there are helicopters flying off over here, and I see these lines coming down, and somebody tells me, "Don't worry about it, those are tracers." So we can tell where the bullets are hitting. But then I started seeing green tracers going back, and I'm going, wait a minute, they're shooting back. And I said, "Don't worry about it, that's the ammo dump." Wait a minute. I'm peeling potatoes. You haven't told me where I'm going. Where I go would get attacked. I have no weapon. I have no helmet. I have nothing but this peeler here. And you're telling me they're shooting. He says, "Well, that's okay." And a few minutes later, I see the same thing off on my left side. And they say, What's going on there? He said, don't worry about it. That's where the aviation fuel's kept. I'm going, wait a minute. They tell me nothing. Finally, get about 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, says, okay, go find a barracks that's got a dry mattress and sleep for a little bit, then get up tomorrow morning and we'll see what's going on. And I didn't realize how hard that was to find a dry mattress over there because during the monsoon season, everything is wet. So I went into a barracks and found out, well, dark. You can't turn a light on because it's dark. And I'm wandering around. I finally found a barracks with a cot in it that had a mattress, and I laid down. I think I was in the building by myself. The next morning, they were blowing the whistles and everything, and I got up and got out there and got in line with everybody else. You just get in line, and they pull up and says, okay, you're going to an infantry unit. Okay, you're going here, and okay, you're going there. And they come up to me and says, don't bring your stuff. You're going to go for an interview. Interview? Said, yeah, they want to see if you can do what they want you to do. So we're riding back, and remember the story about the little short guys? I'm riding back along, and I look, everybody I see is a little short guy wearing black pajamas. So, excuse me. Now I still have no weapon. I have no flak jacket, no helmet, no nothing. I don't know nothing about nothing other than I'm in this place called Vietnam. Now, let me drop back a minute. When that plane door opened and the heat and humidity came in, my first thought was, this ain't North Carolina. I thought I was used to heat and humidity, but I won't rush nothing except the heat and humidity of Vietnam. And the smells, oh, the smells are unique. You cannot explain the smells when that plane door opened. It's a mixture of a lot of different things, and none of it's good. As we were going to 90th replacement, they put us on a bus that had screen wire over the windows. So I went up to the driver. I feel like I'm in prison. Where did the screen wire? We're not going to escape. I don't even know where I'm at. He said, no, dummy. So when we go through by this village up here, they can't throw grenades in the window. That's when I really decided that I might be in a war zone. So then I started seeing these people, and like I said, they were little short guys wearing pajamas. And I went up to the driver again and said, driver, how do you tell the good guys and the bad guys? He said, it's simple. If they point a rifle at you, they're probably bad guys. And then I get a 90th replacement and get KP, and then they could take me to Long Bend. And I got interviewed there. And while I was at Fort Belvoir, I got an Article 15, speeding on post. The guy didn't ask me, but I had 3 Marines in the car I was taking to the airport because they were going to go on AWOL, but he didn't ask me. So I only got Article 15 for speeding. But the captain I talked to, who looked like Zorba the Greek, he laughed, and evidently he was an enlisted man at one time because he said he understood he had one at one time. And he was really a guy, and he said, you got the job. So then they took me back, and I got all what clothes I had and went back to Long Bend. And you can see Long Bend there, Long Bend Post, and you can see Saigon. We're about 20 miles north of Saigon. Some people said 22. Now, Long Bend was an interesting place. Next picture. Let's talk about Long Bend just a second. 90th place, as you can see right there. The entrance to it. Long Bend Post was the largest military installation in the world. There were 55,000 plus men and women there. As you can see, kind of a layout with Ben War Air Base there. The Long Bend Post, it was big, had a little bit of everything. And just above where you see the word Long Bend, it says ammo dump. Okay. And just above that is the aviation fuel. And it was a big place. Well, that was where I was stationed in. And when I first got there, I slept in a tent that had not built up all the buildings yet. So let's go ahead and see what we're at the next one. Okay. The things that made Long Bend so famous, it was the home of the USAV headquarters. You can see those 2-story metal buildings there. You could walk by the outside and almost get a chill. That was the most air-conditioned place I have ever seen. Those flagpoles, by the way, were $37,000 a piece sitting there. And then up to the right, you see Long Bend Jail, or we call it LBJ. That was where if you did something that you were not supposed to do and you're an American soldier, you ended up there, and you can tell you did not want to be there. The ammo dump, of course, and that gives you a picture of the ammo dump as it blew up during the Tet Offensive in '68. It was an interesting situation. I stood there and watched that blow up like an idiot. And also the 93rd evac was located there at Long Bend. So that was some of the things that kind of gave Long Bend its importance, not to mention the aviation fuel and the home of several big units, the ordnance and so forth there. They had tons and tons and tons of supplies. That's where the good part of the supplies that came in through that part of the Vietnam came in through that way. So now, people call we when you're in Vietnam, we had very colorful language. Those of us who were in the rear, well, I'm still trying to figure out where the rear was. Those of us who were in the rear were called REMFs, rear echelon, and we're going to stop it there. And now I definitely lived a whole lot better than the guys in the field. Ain't no question about that. I mean, I had never had an omelet till I got to Vietnam and go to the mess hall. Now, one of the reasons the mess hall there was good because there were so many officers, generals and colonels and majors and captains and lieutenants to shake a stick at. So we ate well, good. But this is a nice barracks that was hit by a 122 millimeter rocket right there at 90th placement, one of the safe areas of Vietnam. So I kind of give you the idea that there won't no safe areas. So you spent 364 days in a wake up, never knowing if you're going to wake up the next day. So every morning was a happy day because you saw it. But I kind of give you an idea. Now, this is a map of Long Bend. And I'm still trying to figure this out. At the entrance of every gate going into Long Bend, there were several, there was a 4x8 sheet of plywood with that map on it with all the unit locations. Now, if you were a bad guy, wouldn't you think that was be an interesting place? But then again, I got to looking at it. See, we had a lot of Vietnamese come on base during the day. In my barracks, we had Mama San, two Mama Sans. We gave a certain amount of money each month for them, and they kept the barracks clean. They cleaned our uniforms, starched our uniforms, kept our shoes spit shine every day, did whatever. So Mama San was there. The girls who worked different places, the offices, and some of the clubs and so forth were there. So there were thousands of Vietnamese people there, and they probably knew Long Bend better than the rest of us anyway. So I guess the signs out front didn't make any difference. This is where I was stationed at 159th Engineer Group, part of 20th Engineer Brigade. That is an early picture because when I got there, right out front there was a tube in the ground with a little short fence around it and rocks all in there. And that was what we call that was what we call a urinal. I will tell you, it was called a piss tube, but it was there. You just go out there side of the road, wave at people that went by, and stand there and do your thing in that tube. Had rocks all around it, and I guess there was a barrel or something in there. But that was that right out where that sign is when I got there. And that tree that you see there, that was gone too, because that's where we put our Jungle Rules volleyball net later on there. But that's 159 Engineers. And I'm not certain what that smoke is back there in the background, but I have an idea what it is, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Okay. Now, I apologize for some of these pictures. I took over 1,000 pictures on slides, and I had the slides made into photos so that I could show them like this, but they were bad quality, so I'm having them done again. That's me as a private E1 there in the office. That's the 20th Engineer Brigade patch, and that is my office there. You can see the little teddy bear back there in the back. That was my office when I was in the office. That room is just as wide as that picture right there, because to the right there is a wall. There were 4 hours in a room, but the main thing about it was air conditioned. It was the only air conditioning anywhere around. We could look out the window right there and see my full bird colonel in his office, and he didn't have air conditioning. I'm a private E1, and I'm so important that I got air conditioning. It's kind of hard to work on paper like that when your arm sticks to it. So we had air conditioning. Now, what did I do as a draftsman in Vietnam? Okay. Well, I drew important pictures like you see up there, the drunken Indian and the drunken pilgrim and the turkeys and that sort of stuff. And the sign, and you can't read it because the picture didn't come out pretty good. But that's a sign made out of illustration board to make it look old like that. It says 15 Engineer Group and so forth. One of the jobs I had, which took me almost a month, was I had to do a long scroll, probably about 4 feet long, in old English for a rotating officer who's leaving. I was somewhat of an artist there, so I got all the interesting stuff. Y'all remember the mimeograph paper? If you're too young to remember mimeograph paper, God bless you. It was a blue piece of paper, very, very flimsy, and you typed or whatever you were going to do on it, and you run it off a mimeograph machine. And I tell you something, try to draw something on one of those. It tears, it comes all to pieces. Then you take this little blue, like whiteout, and you put it on there and you draw again. I had to draw on mimeograph paper for the group newsletter that came out once a week. And then we had charts. Now I'm a headquarters company, 159 Engineer Group. We had officers, we had battalions under us. We had our own asphalt plant, on concrete plant, on everything. And every day, seems like the general had to be briefed. It wasn't every day, but it seemed like every day. So I had to make the charts, and the charts had charts for the general's briefing. And then in my spare time, I had to do maps and survey results. And then I had to do special reports. Now, occasionally I did real work on a building or a dog kennel or something, but let me tell you about this report. They decided I had to do this special report because I had to get special security clearance. The only other guy in the room there that could have done it was from originally his ancestors from Russia, and he didn't have his citizenship, I don't think, so they couldn't use him. So I had to go get special security clearance, and my job was to do a report on all the bridges in Vietnam in that area, in 3 Corps. So if I got up to use the bathroom, I had to take the information with me. So I had to have it all the time. Now I do this report, and I do a good job of this report with the information I had. 2 weeks after I finished this report, the Stars and Stripes magazine, which was the military magazine, came out, kind of like a big newspaper, came out, and they had pictures and better information that I had to start with on my reports. So I had to go through all this garbage with a special clearance to do a report when I could just waited. I should have waited to Stars and Stripes if they told me, then I could get better information. But sometimes the Stars and Stripes were distributed and then they come back and picked it up because it was something that they didn't like. But I kind of give you an idea of some of the things I had to do as a draftsman. But I'm a country boy. All right, you have a question?
What was the machine that was kind of blue paper and it was in ammonia?
Oh, that was the regular printing machine for like you're printing off blueprints. But it's called Blu-ray. It's called a Blu-ray machine. It uses ammonia.
Yeah,
It has a strong light. Now we had one of those, and that's what I've always used as a draftsman drawing house plans.
Okay.
But this was the little blue machine you did on 8.5 by 11 paper, or either the 14 legal size, and it that real thin. Almost it was like drawing on a Kleenex, except worse. And then they put it on there and run it by hand and so forth. Huh?
A stencil.
Yeah, a stencil.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh God, they were pain. Anyway, that was the reports and so forth. But I'm a country boy. I grew up in the South, and hey, I'm in a place I'd never been so far, so I want to see the country. So I was told never volunteer for anything. But if you're sitting in an office with 4 other guys, that's like being in a closet making charts. You do about anything. So there's a bad picture of me. I became a driver. Well, actually, the first time they gave me a chance to get out, my job was to ride in the back of the Jeep. I was to ride in the back of the Jeep, so we went through villages. The captain rode in the front seat with his driver, so they were up front, but my job was in the back with my M14. And my job was, if we went through a village and somebody threw a grenade in, it was my job to throw them back out. Okay, interesting job. As you see, the middle job there, that was another job that came along. There were 55,000 men and women, as I said, plus there, and I didn't know whether it was a flush John anywhere in the world. We had an outhouse, and every day some lucky soldier had to pull those barrels out and put diesel fuel in it and burn it. So that picture is a guy burning crap. And I can tell you, there people go, I don't want to burn crap. Well, listen, When you're in Vietnam and you're burning crap, nobody gave you any crap. When you're in Vietnam and burning crap, nobody shot at you. When you were in Vietnam and you were burning crap, the leeches left you alone. Never got a leech on me when I was burning crap. Got plenty of them when I was out in the jungle. I never stepped on a landmine when I was burning crap. So it's all how you look at it and study it as a Southern boy. Now you see right there that next picture is a bridge, and it's the main bridge going into, it's the Newport Bridge. My mind went totally blank there. It was a Newport Bridge going into Saigon from Long Binh, and they blew a section of it. And as you can see, traffic just kept right on going, tanks and everything. Now, you remember those pictures I showed you a while ago that of the drunken pilgrim and the Indians and the turkeys and so forth? That was what I was told to do to decorate the mess hall for Thanksgiving, 1967. Guess where I was Thanksgiving 1967? I'm in the jungle. That's me in the jungle eating my sea rations while everybody else was back at Long Binh having hot turkey and dressing and cranberry sauce and pies, enjoying my work and eating a nice meal. Did they save me anything from me? Hell no. That was my Thanksgiving dinner. There were times that probably I'm going, why did I volunteer? Okay. Now, some of the things we did, as you can see there's a guy going through the elephant grass. That stuff will cut you all to pieces. You go through there, you might step in a hole that's bigger than you because a bomb hit it somewhere, or somebody could shoot at you, you wouldn't know it. The middle picture there is a armored personnel carrier, which we rode from time to time to get where we were going. But in this particular instance, there's a lieutenant in the middle of that bamboo bush. He was on a bulldozer, a full-size Rome plow bulldozer, and he shouldn't have been on there because he was a lieutenant, but he drove it into that bamboo bush and realized that it closed in around it and was cutting him all up. So he cut the bulldozer off. We had to take machetes and cut the idiot out. There we are trying to figure out who's going to do what. We went out with the surveyors, the 9th Infantry guys there went out with us to make sure we took care of ourselves. There's some kids standing along. We're looking right now. You can see, usually I have my picture in the back of the Jeep in that mirror right there. So I got a picture of myself, but we're at a bridge that's been blown up, and it's got one of those English bridges that comes in on like a tank and opens up and covers where the bridge used to be. So that's kind of being out in the field. Give you an idea of my time out there. Now, the big picture on the right, at Long Binh, we were forced to keep our rifles locked up in a rifle rack like that all the time. If we went to alert and something happened, we had to go find the supply sergeant, get him sober enough to tell us where the key was so we could get our rifles. Except mine, I kept mine clean. Most of the rifles never come out of that rifle rack the year they were there, and they were covered with dust and dirt and so forth. By M14, I went out a lot, but that's me coming in from a day. Now, you got to remember, when I left that day, I had a starched uniform on with spit shine boots. And dry. You can understand why Mama San hated me, because everybody else, all she had to do was brush off a little bit of dust on the boots and the uniform they could wear for a couple of days. Now, there's a picture going out to the showers we built and during the monsoons. We were engineers. We had a real thing. And there's the armored personnel carrier getting stuck. And a picture above that is me filling up my canteens. Sometimes I might be walking across the company area and they say, hey, we got to go. Where we're going? Get your stuff. And usually I like to carry 2 or 3 canteens. This particular day, I was lucky to have one canteen. And if you notice, I don't have a rifle. All I could get that day, it would give me time for was to grab a 45 and strap it to my holster, which I'd never shot before. To go out. And there, as you can see, we're going through a trail. And the reason that survey ribbon's on there, because there'd been a really good fight there before, and that tree had been cut down by bullets, all kinds of holes and so forth there. So that kind of gives you an idea that my experience in Vietnam was a little bit two-pronged there, in the office or out. Now, when I came home from Vietnam, I got to Fort Hood, Texas. Now, Fort Hood, Texas is an interesting place. As you can see there, Dallas and Austin and we're just almost halfway. Fort Hood, Texas is home of the Armored Corps. They have nothing there but scrub pines, cows, and lots of land because the armored guys play armor all day, every day. Those guys spend as much time out in the field as the guys in Vietnam. But I was assigned back to a headquarters company again. But they didn't know what to do with me. What did they do with the draftsman? They couldn't figure out what to do. They couldn't figure out what to do. They were going to send me to trade school to learn how to type. And I already been through typing and failed it because my fingers didn't work good, but I'm good at hunt and peck. But they were going to send me back to school because there were so many people coming back from Vietnam and awards, medals and so forth. They didn't know what to do with them. But I got a call one day and said that my father had leukemia and was given 6 months to live. And could I come home so I could look after my family, my brother and so forth? So I went to the company commander that I worked for and said, hey, this is my problem, showed him the paperwork. He says, go down and talk to the lieutenant, see what you can do. So I went down, he'd already called. I got down there to where the lieutenant was and said, I can get you out of the service easy and get you transferred to Fort Bragg. How soon would you be interested in getting out? I said, how soon can you get me out? 2 weeks and 2 days later, I have had 2 years in the Army. So I had 2 years of service in 2 days. So now I'm over 2 pay. I'm on my way home from Texas. Okay. Now, how does life change? Well, we came home to Raleigh and I went to work, got on with our lives. I didn't talk about Vietnam. I didn't tell anybody whether I was a veteran, other than purchasing a house using the VA benefits. The media had made all Vietnam veterans suspect as to being alcoholics, drug addicts, and burned out mental cases. We were only shown as the homeless, criminals, baby killers, unwashed and unwanted that had embarrassed the United States. The veterans organizations often did not want to have us members because of the above reasons, and that we were somehow the first military unit to lose a war. People say we did not get any parades. Parades weren't important. Respect and support would have been nice rather than parades. So we kept silent. Let me give you a little bit of statistics there before we run out of time, but this is why I have a hard time understanding why we were treated the way we were. Only 25% of the people who went to Vietnam were draftees. That means that 75% who went to Vietnam joined the military. During World War II, volunteers, 75%. Now everybody talks about when Pearl Harbor was bombed, Pearl Harbor was bombed. People were fighting to get to the sign-up place. Well, in World War II, the percentage was 66% drafted. That's less than half of people who joined. But the perception was that almost everybody joined. Black men suffered 12.5% of deaths at a time when the Black population of military age was 13.5% of the American population. So the rumors were going around that the Black man was cannon fodder and there were more of them getting killed. This shows you that less than the percentage were killed. Average age of those killed in Vietnam was 23.1 years. The average age of those who served in Vietnam was 22 years. The average age of World War II was like 26. 79% of the men who served in Vietnam had a high school degree or higher, as to 63% in career and 45% in World War II. What this is saying that people in World War II, only 45% of them had graduated from high school. 3/4 of those who served in Vietnam had family incomes above the poverty level. It was also said that the Vietnam veteran was the poor families who had nowhere else to go. There is no difference in drug use between Vietnam veterans and non-veterans of the same age group, as per a study by the Veterans Administration. Yet we were called drug addicts. PTSD. The Civil War veterans suffered soldier's heart. In World War II, it was shell shock. And in Korea, it was battle fatigue. Military records showed Civil War psychological casualties at an average of 26 per thousand men. In World War II, some units experienced over 100% psychological casualties per thousand men. 100 as opposed to 20. I would have really thought Civil War was more, but it's not according to the paperwork. 100 casualties, PTSD as we call it now, during the World War II. Some units, casualties per 1,000. In Korea, nearly 1/4 of all battlefield evacuations were due to mental stress, or 50 per 1,000 men. In Vietnam, the comparable average was 1% per 1,000 men. Yet we were mental cases. Out of the year 2000 census count, there was an estimate that the Vietnam veteran population was only 1,002,511 of the 2,710,276 that served in country. During this same census, the number of Americans falsely claiming to be Vietnam veterans was 13,853,027. That means 4 out of every 5 who claim to be a Vietnam veterans are not. Now, if you look at these statistics, why did American people treat us the way they did? Why?
Because of the media.
Okay, let's go into the next one. So why were we shunned, called names, looked down on, ridiculed, met with open hostilities, and our history rewritten? Was it the war protesters? A lot of it. Was it the media? A lot of it. During Tet. Tet was an absolute disaster for the communists. We won in everything but we lost the war during Tet because of the media. Was there constant negative reports on TV? As TV this was the first war ever on TV. And do you ever see anything about the war on TV today? It's almost like we don't have a war going on. But back during the Vietnam War, it was every day. Casualty counts, body bags, attacks. Was the civil rights movement? Actually, the civil rights movement was injured and slowed due to the Vietnam War. Was it the women's movements? Make love, not war, burn your bra, and all that good stuff. Was it the movies? In the movies, they always portrayed us as crazy, psychotic people. Was it the wannabes that told wild stories? The people who wanted to go to who claimed to be Vietnam veterans, they come in and talked about skinning and eating people and all the stuff they did, and throwing people out of helicopters and so forth? Or was it just the gullible public? I think it was all the above in one way or the other. All of it probably had some basis to it, but when it came right down to it, if you remember the statistic we just talked about, it was a bunch of bunk. Okay, let's see. Whatever is the reason or reasons, that's why this show came about. For several years, I watched the members of North Carolina Vietnam Veterans Affairs from a distance, never letting them know that I too was a Vietnam veteran. Finally, I took a leap, acknowledged that I also was a Vietnam veteran, and joined the group. I discovered they had a mission to keep the POW MIA status in the public eye by doing special calling of the names of those North Carolinians that are still unaccounted for as a result of the war in Southeast Asia. The ceremony was held in North Carolina State Capitol grounds on the first Saturday of every month and have not missed a date since 1987, when the Vietnam Memorial on the grounds was dedicated. There were 65 unaccounted for the current number, and it's 35 currently. Okay. 38, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Education was very important to NCVI, and that had been going on in the schools for a long time before I became a member. With some trepidation, I went with some speakers to a class and realized how powerful it was for the students as well as the veterans to speaking to them. I had found my outlet. Didn't know I needed one till I got there. Another new member was a longtime teacher and educator who wanted to expand the speaking and education of the public. With the help of Vietnam veterans and other teachers, Bob Matthews developed a full curriculum course entitled Lessons of Vietnam. Does that name sound familiar? Bob felt that it was so important that he put his job on the line to start teaching this course. I won't tell you the things he did. It proved to be a success and such an innovative idea that other schools started to use the LOV curriculum. It was such a success here that it should be a success everywhere else. So Bob, myself, along with Joe Harsh, started to take money from our pockets and travel all over the United States at national SOTI studies conferences, teaching teachers how to teach the LOV course. That had great response. Also, the man who was a big supporter of NCVI and a former military member in Israel before coming here to the United States approached Bob and I about doing an online TV show. Bob and I discussed it and decided we didn't know anything about online stuff and did nothing. Amnon persisted, so we decided to try it out. Amnon Nissan, who owns Nissan Communications and does several online shows, including his own, gave us the use of his studio, his knowledge, and his production labor. Bob has moved out of the area, so now I am the host, researcher, and the one that puts the show together with Amnon's production and guidance. Lessons of Vietnam live streaming show telling the real story of the Vietnam veteran and those involved. Bob Matthews teaching in Vietnam on one of our trips. That's me. And there's Amnon at the controls trying to keep me straight. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, is how the Lessons of Vietnam show came about and how Bill Dixon got involved. Thank you again for, as always, for taking your time to join us for Lessons of Vietnam live streaming show. Your presence is important to us. If you feel that any information given out on our show is incorrect, please reach out to me and let me know. We want to tell the story right. Our next show will be August 28th, and we finish up on looking at the mysteries and secrets of the Vietnam War, something that's coming up you might be interested in. August 17th, the Triangle Purple Heart Foundation will be holding their Purple Heart dinner starting at 5 o'clock at the McKimmon Center off Western Boulevard over by North Carolina State University. They do have some tickets there that were purchased by an anonymous provider. And if you're a veteran, you can get in and have dinner for nothing, whether you're a Purple Heart recipient or not. Come have a dinner if you're a veteran. That's pretty much it right now that I'm going to tell you. I hope you are able to take part in the Veterans Experience, whatever, or at least maybe get one held in your area. Thank you very much, and we'll look forward to seeing you August 28th. Good night.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. If you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section at nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Telestream's Wirecast software, StreamingGear.com, Carolina Apparel, and DeltaForce.net.